suffer in the future life. So basically all sin involves some sort of suffering caused to other living entities, which is unjustified or excessive. And thus we end up with a lot of suffering in our life. The offense is also a type of suffering. When you offend somebody, it could be not physically harming or whatever. You may cause mental suffering or whatever. But the difference is that the offense is something devotional. Now we can offend the Lord, or we can offend the devotees. Now the Lord, of course, says, I don't mind if you offend me, but if you offend my devotee, I really mind that. So the offense against the devotee is much more serious. So we can ask the question, well, if we do a sinful activity, it's also serious because we have to suffer karma in a future life. So what's the difference with the aparad, especially against a devotee? So the difference is that, of course, it's a sin, as normal sins are, so you can get karma for that also. But the greater problem is that because it's an offense against the devotee, we get much more serious results. So not only we're going to get some physical suffering in a future lifetime, but the more serious effect is that your bhakti, whatever bhakti you had, gets destroyed or can get destroyed. So at least to some degree, depending on the type of offense, serious or less serious or whatever, there'll be degrees of interference with your bhakti. So for the devotee, that is more disastrous than taking a animal body or whatever, or suffering some karma in a future lifetime. If your bhakti decreases, then you have to work again to increase the bhakti. So the real negative effect of the aparad is the decrease of bhakti and perhaps even the destruction of the bhakti. So you have to start from zero. So that's the worst effect of the aparad. So when in the scriptures it talks about how the devotees have to beware of aparads, it's because of this. It is a great interference to your devotional service. Nevertheless, we may have to suffer the other effects, the physical effects, etc., as we see here in the case of Daksha. So he ended up with a goat head as a result. In one sense, of course, it's not a severe punishment because, as is explained here, Daksha got the head, and suddenly, he woke up and he felt he was the same person, whatever, same memory, whatever. And if he didn't look in the mirror, probably he would think, I'm the same person. And you look in the mirror, then you get a big surprise. So, in other words, his consciousness remained the same. And this is what Prabhupada talks about, that the soul goes from body to body, and whatever consciousness you have gets preserved into the next body, next body, next body. That's true, but it's also, there's some modifications of that. So if a normal person is in a human body, and then because of his sinful activities he becomes a dog or a cat, then he doesn't really remember. His consciousness is not carried over, and he doesn't remember that he was, a human being with certain experiences. So it's not inevitable that if you get into other bodies, you are going to remember your previous state, etc. But what is carried over is your state of consciousness. If you're a human being and you act like an animal, then you can become an animal. So you get the consciousness like an animal, which will involve, obviously, less intelligence, less memory power, etc. So we have exceptional cases, as in the case of Daksha here. He could remember his previous state as Daksha. And we have the case of Bharat, who could remember, when he became a deer, he could remember his previous life. So these are exceptional cases. why they are exceptional, one, of course, is because they're great devotees of the Lord. And because they are devotees, the Lord takes special care of them. So whatever happens, whatever condition they fall into, the Lord makes some sort of arrangement for them so that they don't have to ultimately suffer. In the case of Bharat, yes, he kind of had to suffer as a deer, but he tolerated that situation, and then in his next life, he got prema. So that was an arrangement of the Lord. In this case, Daksha also, though he had committed serious offense, because he was, you could say, like a Prajapati, he was also some sort of devotee. So because of that, the Lord made special arrangement for him. And he didn't forget everything, even though he had a goat head. So in this way, the Lord makes special arrangements for special people. The normal case is not like that. If you're not a devotee, you don't get that arrangement. If you're a devotee, in most cases, and you don't commit aparads, then you don't get an animal body. You get a human body, and you can continue your devotional service in a very good way. So that's the normal case, as also described in Bhagavad Gita. Like the yogi, if he does yoga in one lifetime, doesn't succeed, then he continues in the next lifetime. So with the devotee, usually they will continue their devotional service and advance from where they left off. So in that sense, yes, their consciousness does continue and is preserved, and they go on. So whatever bhakti you've achieved in one lifetime, that goes with you in your next lifetime, and you start at that particular point of your Krishna consciousness. So in that sense, there's no loss of consciousness. However, you may not remember your previous body. So this is the normal arrangement for the devotees. For those who are not devotees, then, if they're fortunate, they are human beings, they die, they will get another human body. They also will not remember their previous lifespan, etc. And according to their consciousness that they've achieved throughout their life, and when they die, then they will be born with that particular type of consciousness. If they die in Rajagun, then they'll continue in Rajagun when they're born. If they were in Sattva, they will continue in Sattva. If they were in Tamas, they will continue in Tamas. So, in that sense, there is a continuity of their consciousness. Also, even though they may not remember everything from previous lifetime, as Daksha has done here. So all of these arrangements are there for the progress of the jiva. When the jiva gets a human birth, then he has a special privilege of being able to consciously act in this lifetime to make progress, further progress in his consciousness until he becomes Krishna conscious. But it may be a very slow process by which he does that. Slowest process is simply law of karma, and you simply, as a human being, go from body to body according to your karma. And it's a little bit haphazard, you go up and down or whatever. But at a certain point, you may get intelligence, or you may get mercy. The mercy may not be devotional mercy. It may be simply the mercy of taking advantage of the Vedic literature in general, such as doing karma yoga, participating in varnashram, etc. That's one form of mercy. And by that, one can gradually progress through the gunas to sattva gun and become a brahmana. The other is, of course, on your own intelligence, you may be able to detect that this life is rather useless, and I'd rather try to figure out what's beyond life and death, or whatever like that. But that's very rare. And usually it will only arise in special circumstances, or if a person has already reached a stage of sattva gun in his life. Then he's got the intelligence and the, let's say, the insight to understand he's not the material body. So as far as the Vedas are concerned, the first step would be to participate in the Varnashram system and do karma yoga, and by that gradually you elevate yourself through tamagun as a human being, and you can get to sattva. And once you get to sattva, then you're qualified for jnana yoga and astanga yoga, and through that then you can get mukti, or liberation. Yeah. This, of course, is not final. This is just another step beyond, gunas. Getting to sattva guna is the goal of karma yoga. Getting freedom from the gunas, becoming nirguna, that's the goal of jnana yoga and astanga yoga. Many people will think that's the final result. However, from scriptures like Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita, we also learn that's not the final goal. Final goal is prema. To get that prema, you have to take another process, and that's the process of bhakti. So all of these are steps are arranged by the Supreme Lord for the jiva to advance beyond the material world and reach that highest goal of prema. So why prema? Why not just liberation? So liberation also is a goal because you're free from material bodies, free from ignorance, free from suffering, free from karma. It's all peaceful. So in one sense, yes, that's also mercy of the Lord to get stop the process of birth and death. But it's not a positive state for the jiva. Like a person's in jail, so the immediate goal is get out of jail. That's your liberation. But again, just getting out of jail, what is that? Is that the perfection of life, just to be outside the jail? No. Then once you get out of the jail, you should do something. So that is actually what bhakti is, what you do after you get out of the jail, once you get liberation. But that is also very difficult to speculate on. We don't know. We have to go to scripture for that. So in the scripture it says, okay, there is a goal beyond liberation, that is prema. So this is the state of, it's like the, let's say, the opposite of the material world. In the material world, we're doing all sorts of activities with bodies and trying to be happy. So a spiritual world with prema means you've got a spiritual body in the spiritual world, and you're doing activities, and you do become happy eternally. That's the difference. But to do that, the jiva has to cultivate a certain tendency. That is, he has to cultivate bhakti. So as Nectar of Chaitanya Charitamrita describes, through the mercy of Guru and Krishna, you get the seed of bhakti. So you're jiva, but you need a little something there. So you get the mercy of Krishna and Guru, and you get a little seed of bhakti. And then, where is it planted? It's planted in the jiva. And then the jiva has to cultivate that seed and make it grow. So in other words, we're actually transforming the jiva himself from a blank state to a state with the seed to developing a whole plant until we get a fruit. So in this way, the jiva becomes transformed. And in that process of bhakti, then gradually we get this manifestation. The plant grows bigger and bigger, it develops leaves and flowers, and then finally the fruit. And simultaneously, the jiva also begins to develop his spiritual body with spiritual senses, so that when the jiva does sadhana and he reaches bhava stage, then he can actually perceive the Lord with the spiritual senses. So in other words, he's already got a spiritual body. with spiritual eyes, so he can see the Supreme Lord at that state. Oh, this is the, you can say, the development of the seed. The seed of bhakti is there, and it manifests finally where the jiva develops the spiritual eyes and spiritual hands and spiritual feet and spiritual nose and spiritual voice, etc. And then he can perceive the Lord and interact with the Supreme Lord. And this reaches a further state, a further development in prema, where that spiritual body completely develops, like the fruit from the flower, and then he interacts with the Lord intimately, and he gets a full manifestation of rasa, or taste. And this gives rise to bliss, and that's eternal. So that's the positive development of the jiva. So the scriptures will provide for us to go through these different stages to get to the highest stage of prema, if we follow the instructions properly. However, Supreme Lord is also a little merciful, so even if you cannot go through all of these stages, you can shortcut the whole system. So normally if you go to school, then you have to start in the kindergarten or whatever, and whatever preschool and all that stuff, and then you get to the first grade and you go all the way up to the 10th standard or the 12th standard or whatever. Then you have to go to college, then you get your degree, and if you may go further, then you get your PhD. So there's a whole system of gradually developing. So that's, like we say, one system. But we also know it's also a little bit long. It may take you 30 years to get through that whole system. 30, 35 years, so by the time you graduate and get your PhD, you're old. So there's a quicker system also. You could probably skip a few years here and there, whatever, like that. So Krishna also provides that for the jivas, the human being jivas at least. There's a little bit of a quick system. And that is, you can surpass the whole karma yoga, gyan yoga, stanga yoga elevation processes and just ignore that and just directly take to the process of bhakti. Still, you have to go through stages again. So we have, Sraddha, Bhajana Kriya, Nartana Vritti, Nishta Ruchi, Asakti Bhava Prema. There's still some stages there, but it's a much quicker process than having to do karma yoga, starting at tamagun and getting to sattva gun, then do jnana yoga, then do astanga yoga, then come to bhakti yoga. So this is the, the simplified system the Lord also offers, particularly in Kali Yuga, when none of the other systems are really intact or practical for the jivas. So therefore, just do bhakti yoga. As Krishna says at the end of Bhagavad Gita, just forget everything else, just do bhakti. But the problem is that even then, Krishna says, bhakti very nice, everyone can take to bhakti, but he says, don't teach this to the people that don't have any faith, who are envious, etc., 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 which is most of the people in the world. So therefore it becomes limited again, even though it's supposed to be for everybody. Again, it becomes a little bit limited. So what is the solution? The solution is given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he says, in bhakti we have process of Nam Sankirtan, which is open for everybody, and everybody can take part in it very, very easily. Now we do have, don't preach to the faithless people. Again, there's limitation. So if we look around and then we want to spread holy name everywhere, but everybody is unqualified for the preaching because they don't have faith. So what do we do? So solution is, the name is such that even if people don't have faith, and even if we can't preach to them in order that they practice pure chanting and pure bhakti, even then, if they just hear the name, that's also purifying for them. Yeah? So therefore, the process for people who don't have faith, our preaching does not consist of trying to force them to accept the statements of Bhagavad Gita and force them to take a Bhagavad Gita or whatever. It's not going to work, and it becomes offensive because it's an offense to the holy name. So what do? Just let them hear the name. Let them take prasadam, whatever like that. Don't preach. Just expose them to bhakti, fine. So that process works because the process of bhakti, and especially hearing the name, will affect that jiva if they don't have faith. It may not be apparent in this lifetime what happens inside of that jiva, but it does have an effect on them. And if they get a chance next lifetime, that will also have an effect on them. So eventually, by constant exposure or repeated exposure to the holy name, that jiva will develop faith. Then we can preach to them. So there's two processes of preaching for us. Just expose everybody. That's one type of preaching for general. And the other, of course, is once they do have a little faith, they're willing to accept something, then we can give them detailed instructions on how to chant properly so that they can chant purely and get knowledge. Then they can start this process of gradually elevating themselves until they get to prema. So therefore, that's the system that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given to open up the possibilities for attaining that highest goal of prema to the human beings in general. The two processes, the general process and then the more particular process of giving them knowledge once they've developed the faith. And through that then, there's more opportunities for the human beings to access the process of bhakti and get to prema. And when we do this, then we don't have to worry so much about what body you have, whatever, like, a deer body or daksha body with a goat head or whatever. Doesn't really matter anymore because we're all under the protection of Krishna at that stage. And whatever body we take doesn't really matter as long as somehow or other we continue our devotion and continually try to serve the Lord in every lifetime. So that's why in the Shastakata it says, life after life, may I just continue to serve the Lord's lotus feet, whatever birth I have. So therefore, bhakti solves all these problems that we find here with individuals in the Bhagavatam that end up with different types of bodies in the material world. Ultimately, the jiva, as I said, develops a spiritual body, goes to the spiritual world with that spiritual body, which is quite different from these limited material bodies. In one sense, the body and the soul are not different. It's all spiritual. And the body does not act as a obstacle or a covering on the jiva as the material body does in the material world. So, quite different from material bodies. Okay. Any question now? Well, the jiva, of course, is the source of consciousness, ultimately. And therefore, as Prabhupada says, the jiva goes from body to body, and then its consciousness goes from body to body. But it's a little more complicated than that because there's a subtle body also, the sukshma sarir, which goes with the jiva from body to body. So it's that subtle body which may hold all the memories of the previous experiences, etc. This is normally what happens. So when you go to another body, you carry with you your impressions from previous bodies, and you carry with you your karmas. So that's all held in the subtle body, because it's all material stuff, and the soul is spiritual. So the subtle body acts as a subtle covering on the jiva, or the atma. And it's got all these things in the karmas, and your vasanas, and memories, and everything. So that subtle body, of course, we can simplify it and say, okay, we have, in the subtle body, we have buddhi or intelligence, we have manas, mind, and we have ahankara, this false ego, and we have something called chitta, or consciousness. But it's not the pure consciousness of the jiva, it's kind of the consciousness kind of obstructed by the ahankara, etc. So that type of consciousness is there in the subtle body. It also goes. What is the tendency to do aparadhas? Well, it's just like the tendency to have sinful activities, I suppose, and that is that the jiva has an innate, well, a natural part of his the jiva is his own preferences and desires. So he desires to be independent of the Lord and to strive for his own center of enjoyment. So that gives rise to sinful activity, and also we can say aparads, huh, because of that. So we treasure our own enjoyment over anything else. So therefore we commit aparads against jivas or against devotees. The whole process of bhakti starts with faith. So faith means, to a small degree, 0.1% or whatever, we accept, okay, there is a Supreme Lord. I am the servant of the Lord. I am not the body. I am the Atma. The Atma is the servant of the Lord. And I am not the enjoyer. Supreme Lord is the enjoyer. So we accept that to a small degree with faith. That's the beginning of our bhakti. So along with that little faith, then we have that other faith, the faith in I am the enjoyer and I got to enjoy in the material world. And if it remains strong, it's very difficult to continue your bhakti. So the faith has to develop to a certain amount so that we can, control that urge to go out and just simply enjoy. So we can avoid the offenses and whatever. The more we progress in bhakti. In the beginning, it may be more difficult. Later, as we go on, then it's more under control. If you get to nishta, then it's pretty safe. So the process of bhakti, if done properly, it will naturally reduce the tendency for such things. Another aspect, of course, is knowledge. If we don't know what the aparads are, we're more likely to commit them. If we know what they are, then we can intelligently use our mind to avoid them also. So that's why we need knowledge also along with our bhakti. But that's this devotional knowledge. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. So one of the problems with the human being, or normal human being, is he has a little bit of a difficulty of even concentrating on the experiences of one lifetime. Much less to have previous lifetimes going into your consciousness. Then it becomes quite difficult to live this life because you got all those memories and things into your mind. Huh? So in order to prevent that, then all this gets filtered out and you forget most of the things. You forget consciously, but let's say unconsciously everything is there because you have your subtle body and you have all those impressions from millions of lifetimes sitting there also. So they're there somewhere in the back and they are going to influence you in this lifetime, but it's not going to be, you have all the particular memories and all the details, etc. It becomes too confusing to live this lifetime. Huh? So in order to live this lifetime and just concentrate, okay, here we are now, and we got this situation, that situation, which should I choose? So it becomes a little bit easier just to concentrate on this lifetime and start making choices here rather than reference all the past experiences, many of which may only confuse you more. So therefore it's all filtered out. But what is necessary for your, whatever impressions are necessary for your living this lifetime, they're also supplied to you, but in a very general way, so you don't have any particular knowledge of who you were in the previous life. But you may get some impressions, okay, I think I made a mistake somewhere, and therefore I don't want to do these type of activities because these are bad. So that would come over from previous lifetime also. Yeah, like that. Sure. Yeah. Mm. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, in Daksha's case, of course, he still had his body without the head. And the jiva was there someplace because the jiva stayed and was in the new body also. So we can also assume that the subtle body was also there. So that's why those memories get carried over, not just by the jiva, but by the subtle body as well. In the case of ghosts, it seems to be that these are cases where the person dies, so their body is dead or whatever, and the jiva leaves with the subtle body, but they don't want to leave the body really, and so they don't want to get a new body, so they get stuck in between. Body's decayed or in the grave or is cremated, finished, but they don't want to get into a new body, so they're stuck with the subtle body and the Atma in an intermediate sphere like this, which is a little frustrating because they really can't move objects in this world too much. Rather than this, maybe like this, they can do that a little bit, but they can't do more than that. So, and they can't really enjoy. So they're in a state of illusion in one sense. They're thinking they're still alive in one sense, and at the same time they can't really enjoy. The Atma himself, or who? Oh, Paramatma. Well, it's all up to the jiva. If the jiva really, if they're too attached, then that's the problem. They don't want to listen to anybody. So Paramatma's there to advise, but he's not going to make you do anything. So, yeah. So to help them, of course, we have things like shraddha rites, funeral rites, etc. And of course, they just burn up the body, so there's nothing there left to get attached to, and whatever. All sorts of things are there, but still, some people are still very, very attached, and they'll hang around in the same house for a long, long time. Maybe 5 generations are stuck in the house trying to enjoy the house still, So they're a big illusion, in other words. Oh, well, yeah. So the process of bhakti is shorter, definitely, but then generally we go through these stages, up to prema. That again can be shortened as well by certain things. If you don't commit any aparads, that process becomes quicker. If you do the aparads, then there's very distinct stages you go through. And it could be aparads from this lifetime or previous lifetimes, we don't know. The other point is that if there is mercy from devotees or from Lord himself, like Krishna or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then we have what is called Kripa Siddhi. You can advance very quickly and get to bhava or prema without having to go through all these stages. So that's another shortcut, but that's considered to be very rare. So usually it is sadhana process, which makes it more gradual. But then again, if there's aparas, it becomes slower. Yeah, the subtle body sticks with the jiva as long as you're in the material world. If you get liberation through jnana or yoga, then you also you destroy not only the gross body but the subtle body as well. Then you get liberation. So as long as you got the subtle body attached to the soul, you got to get another birth because that subtle body is holding your karmas and whatever, and then you have to go to get another body. So the process of bhakti also will destroy the gross body and the subtle body, and you get liberation. But not only it destroys the subtle body, it produces the spiritual body. So that then you qualify for spiritual world. Well, we got karmas, attachments, desires, all this stuck there, and that holds us into the material world. And we got to take another body, another body, another body. Yeah, well, it's the same question, I think, as previously. Yeah, because if you got all these memories, it may be somewhat helpful. It may also be the opposite. People with too many memories. We have also cases in this lifetime, people have all sorts of weird experiences, and because of that, they don't want to remember them. They're so bad. So they forget them. So they block out memories. And there's some people that have multiple personalities because they got so many weird experiences that they're in one experience this way, and they don't remember anything about the other experiences. In another personality, then they're another person, and they don't remember other things. And that's how they cope with this life, by blocking out memories or compartmentalizing into certain personalities. So even in one lifetime, people have difficulty coping with all their experiences. What to speak of millions of lifetimes? Yeah, it'd be very confusing for you. Yeah. Well, if you're more advanced, you could cope with it because of your, let's say, your Socrates or your Punyas or whatever, like David does. They can cope with much more, and they live for much longer, so they can cope with more experiences. Brahma can cope with everybody's, all the jivas, and he can understand what they're doing. So, it depends on your level. If you get more punya, then you get more advantage. Even the yogi, yeah. So they can remember previous lifetimes, whatever like that. So they can cope with it. They got the qualification, then they get the abilities. Hmm? Put it into practice when? Well, that's why we have the process of Shravana every day also. And we have Bhagavatam there, so we can hear something and remember what the goal is.
In the last class, you mentioned about Diksha Guru and mantra giving just for deity worship.
Mm.
Please elaborate.
So that's the technical function of Diksha, to get a mantra. And this is a pancharatric process. With that mantra, which is secret, you don't tell other people. You don't tell them we're going to have a mantra kirtan. You can't do that. It's something you chant silently. With that mantra, then you use that mantra when you are offering items to the deity. You should chant the mantra. Otherwise, the offering is not accepted. So if you're offering incense, then you have to chant the mantra. If you're offering lamp, you have to chant the mantra, etc. So the mantra acts as, let's say, it's like Nam is not different from the Lord. So the mantra also not different from the Lord. So this is a way of, let's say, connecting yourself to the deity through sound, through the mantra. So this, of course, is a process which is a little more complicated than just chanting the holy name, because chanting the holy name does not need diksha. You can spread the holy name to every town and village. You don't say you have to take initiation. Everybody can chant. So it's a more open process. The same you can do with the mantra. If you don't do the deity worship, you can meditate on the mantra or chant it silently, as Gopal Kumar did in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. And you can, because it's not different from the Lord, then through that mantra you can also realize the Lord. But it's in our movement, or even in other Vaishnava movements, then the mantra is used for the deity worship, but obviously the deity worship is secondary to chanting the holy name. So we spend more time on chanting the holy name than we do on chanting our deity mantras. Well, not the material one, because that was all destroyed. That's the mind, intelligence, ego are part of Prakriti. We know that Mahavishnu glances, and then Mahatattva, then we have Ahankara manifested, we get mind manifested, intelligence manifested, pranas, material elements, senses, all this material evolutes from Prakriti. So obviously if you're liberated, you give all that up. But when you do bhakti, not only you give up the material, subtle body and gross body, you also develop spiritual body, by which you can relate to the Supreme Lord. So spiritual body means that you will have senses to see the Lord, and mind to think of the Lord, etc., intelligence to serve properly. So whatever we need for serving the Lord manifests in that spiritual body. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm. Well, yeah, the different forms of the Lord, there's one Lord ultimately, it's just Bhagavan, but he has different forms. So in those particular forms, then he acts in a suitable way with suitable rasas for that form. And he doesn't go beyond that. So in the form of Nrsimhadev, then he's got lion head or whatever with nice teeth and claws and whatever like that. So he's, we can say, somewhat limited in the rasa because of that. So we can't imagine him dancing with the gopis or something like that. Doesn't seem to work out too well. He does have one. He has Lakshmi there. Lakshmi is there also, but it's quite limited, the Madhurya rasa aspect. But even the Sakya rasa is quite limited because you look at Nrsimhadev and you're a little bit frightened of him. So the Sakya rasa is not also so favorable for that. There could be a few, but generally it's all dasya. So similarly with Ramchandra, again, he does have, Sita as his wife, but only one wife, so only one Madhurya rasa there, and Sakya, a little bit of Sakya with his brothers, but mostly again Dasya. There's a little Vatsalya with his parents, but basically most people can aspire for Dasya because Rama's like the king, the ideal king, so we'd like to worship the king with great respect, etc. So because of that particular form and the particular pastimes they perform in that form, then certain qualities become attractive to their devotees, which are, let's say, more limited. Whereas with Krishna, he can also show all those qualities for respect and whatever power, etc. But in Vrindavan especially, he manifests these other qualities of sweetness, which the others don't manifest. So in other words, he does not act like a king or a huge, powerful, destroying god who likes to tear apart Hiranyakasipu or anything. When he kills demons, it's all kind of secret, nobody really knows how he killed Putana or Trinavarta or whatever. It's like he's still a baby and everyone has a doubt, well, how did this happen? So his powers are manifested, but they're kind of hidden, so that their affection for the Lord is not obstructed by any of that reverence. So that's the outstanding quality of Krishna. So he has these four Madhurya aspects: Madhurya Rupa, Madhurya devotees, Madhurya pastimes, and Madhurya flute, Venu.
What if the devotee desires different rasa? Lord Vishnudev. So can he go to the next planet?
If you worship Rama, you can go to Rama.
No, if he goes to Lord Rama, he have no desire like with Lord Krishna and different rasa.
Mm-hmm.
If he cultivates, and if he has the desire in spiritual,
Mm-hmm.
can he move from one planet?
Normally, since prema is perfect, if he gets, and he only goes to the spiritual world with prema, so if he goes with prema to Rama, then that's perfection, and he doesn't think of anything else. He's completely satisfied. Mm. Mm. Yeah. No, well, generally, the aparads, if they're unintentional, have less serious effects. It will slighten the bhakti, but it doesn't really destroy the bhakti or whatever. So generally, the devotee doesn't have to worry about them too much. Huh? They have effect, but not so serious effect. The bhakti decreases a little bit only. So they can go on continually with their, life after life. They can increase their bhakti that way. And if it is some sort of intentional offense with some envy or hatred in it, then they can also, if they're intelligent, within their lifetime, they can also mitigate that effect by doing the proper thing. So if they do Vaishnava aparad and they understand it's wrong, they repent, they go to the person, they apologize, and they do intense bhakti, then they can destroy the aparad, and then they can continue as normal also. So therefore, even if the aparads are there are ways of, mitigating the effects. Well, even in this lifetime, because it's not completely unintentional because they are going to the temple. So obviously they don't hate Krishna, and they are taking the prasadam. They know it's Krishna prasadam. It's not, just regular food. So they're devotees of sort, but they're just on a lower level. So they can also advance gradually by association and whatever, and mercy and chanting the holy name. They can also go to a higher level. Is the karma gone? Yeah. If you get prema, then the karma's all gone. There's nothing. Oh, the paramama. The paramama functions for the jiva in the material world to witness their activities and fulfill their desires in the material world, etc. So therefore, in the spiritual world, is no longer necessary. Mhm. Mm. Well, they're not actually two different rasas. They're very similar rasas. Yes, there's Madhurya for Krishna, sweet, and there's Audorja or merciful for Lord Chaitanya. That's the general mood. But uh, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is actually Swayam Bhagavan Krishna with the mood of Radha. So they're quite similar, as opposed to Nrsimhadev and Krishna or Rama and Krishna. Their moods are quite different. So therefore, they're quite equal in that sense. So if the devotee so desires, then he could have two forms in two different pastimes, as we see with Lord Chaitanya's Leela. Balaram is Nityananda, and Krishna is Lord Chaitanya, and we have different cowherd boys are there in the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. So Sridham and Subal are there, but there is devotees of Lord Chaitanya. So those Nityasiddhas have these two forms. So a devotee who's doing sadhana, then if he gets perfection, he could also have two forms to participate in Krishna Leela and in Lord Chaitanya Leela, if he so wants. How is it possible? This is possible simply because of the Achintya Shakti of the Lord, that he can simultaneous, that Jiva can have two different experiences. Yeah, why not? Just as Krishna's got, he's experiencing as Krishna, as Rama, as Nrsimha, he's got millions of experiences. And even the associates of the Lord, like Krishna's in the spiritual world with all his Nityasiddha devotees there, but simultaneously he's in the universe with his Nityasiddha devotees, and he's also in another universe with his Nityasiddha devotees. So the same Mother Yasoda is there, and Nanda, and they're all in different universes, plus they're in the spiritual world. So we got multiple expansions also. operating of the jiva.
Maharaj, just now explained that Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are not different.
Hmm.
And we see that examples of Madhurya Rasa, Sakya Rasa, that Krishna, in the case of gopis
Hmm.
and are there anything related with, like, can somebody express Madhurya Rasa and Sakya Rasa with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu?
Yeah. With Lord Chaitanya, this is covered up. He's Channa avatar. So though he is Krishna, he covers his nature as Supreme Lord, and he somewhat covers his identity as Krishna. So therefore, you cannot really act in the same way with Lord Chaitanya as you do with Krishna, be a gopi with Lord Chaitanya, because he's covered up. He's a devotee of the Lord, rather than being the Lord. There are devotees who try to do that. They are like Lochan Das and that group there, Gauranga Nagaris, who take the mood of conjugal rasa with Lord Chaitanya, but that's not really accepted so much. So it's all covered up. So we have Gadadhar, but he doesn't act like gopi in relation to Krishna. He just acts as a devotee of Lord Chaitanya. That's all. So all of those people who are in Vrindavan Leela, who are in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, they also act as devotees only, rather than having those identities as cowherd boys or gopis.
You mentioned about treating the prema as very easy, but treating the aparad became the slow process. In Bhanu Maharaj story, all he showed is a compassion for the deed. Just because of that, you have to take 100%
Mm.
and you have to take as a Vedavada, then
Mm.
you are in the salvation. How should I understand?
Well, not only he had compassion for the deer, that was okay, but he became absorbed in the deer, and then he stopped worshiping the Lord. And then when he died, he didn't think of Vishnu, he thought of deer. He was so absorbed in the deer, so that was his problem. But that actually is explained by Jiva Goswami, is because why did he become attracted to the deer when he saw the Lord, who was most attractive? And the answer is, some aparad in the previous lifetime caused a disturbance so that he became attracted to the deer.
Humble obeisances to all assembled devotees and humble obeisances to you, Maharaj. My question relates to bhakti. And you mentioned about progress in bhakti and being very slow with sadhana. So I just wondered, is there one particular activity within sadhana that is more potent, that will help accelerate our journey through?
Oh, well, yeah, the main process for accelerated progress is chanting the holy name. This is what Lord Chaitanya is, the Yuga Dharma, and it's the most powerful process to elevate us from the lowest to the highest position. So it's so potent that even if you don't have devotion and you chant the name accidentally, like Ajamil, you can destroy all your karmas in a few seconds, where it may take 1,000 lifetimes or something as a yogi or whatever. Hmm.
Somebody is prema is perfect, but if somebody is in a dasya ras with Krishna, can you move it to the sakya ras?
Well, Dasya is also prema. Sakya is prema. They're all prema. So they're all perfect in their own way. Yeah? So if a person has got prema and dasya, then he considers that to be the ultimate perfection. And there's nothing superior to that. So therefore he has no impetus to look for something better in Sakya or Madhurya or whatever.
The thing about the chanting is the blind deed. That's what you mostly know. But we struggle doing the chanting itself properly. What is the cause of that?
Why we don't chant properly? Well, as I said, we got a little bit of faith, and with that faith we begin bhakti, but then along with that we do have all the material attachments, or the anarthas. So because of all of these anarthas present, then this kind of acts as an interruption to our devotional activities. But the process of bhakti itself will gradually destroy those anarthas and whatever, so that we at least become steady. So that's called nishtha, where the anarthas are still present, but they're not so powerful to actually interfere with our performance of bhakti. So that's a good stage to aim for initially, the nishta stage. And if we continue there to do the bhakti, then the anarthas are significantly more decreased, and then our attraction to the Lord increases much more. And then it's much easier to perform bhakti, and the anarthas are just there, but they're insignificant. So it all depends on the steadiness of practice.
Maybe it's a silly question, but just trying to understand what is the color of Lord Nityananda. Because in Chaitanya Charitamrita, in one place it's mentioned is glossy blackish in color, and then the prayer of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya says Bhakta Dora in color. So, what's the color of Lord Nityananda?
Yeah, there may be various descriptions. He is obviously somewhat like Lord Chaitanya, and sometimes described this when they're dancing. It's like two golden dancing mountains, golden mountains dancing. So it looks like it was similar in complexion.
Just ask a silly question. I hope I don't offend Radha Gopinath. Why is Gopinath white instead of blue?
What is he?
Why is Radha Gopinath white in color instead of
A blackish. Oh, okay. Well, that's we can say our material conception. I think L.A. Krishna also is white. Yeah, white marble. Chennai also is white. So in some temples white, some temples black. So yes, Krishna is actually he's not black. Also, he is the color of a monsoon cloud. And even that color, if we look at material monsoon cloud, obviously cannot be a material color also. But we have these descriptions, okay, Krishna is darkish or blackish or bluish or like a monsoon cloud, to give us some idea of his color, which is actually a spiritual color, not a material color at all. So the deity also is there to give us some idea of, Krishna's form, etc. And if we look at it with material eyes, then we will see material colors and whatever like that. If we start developing spiritually, then we go beyond the material color and we'll actually see the spiritual color. So maybe we have varieties of that black and white or whatever marble just to show us that actually the color is spiritual and we should look with spiritual eyes. Then we'll see the actual color, which is like a fresh monsoon cloud, which is spiritual monsoon cloud, not a material one. Well, some of the rasas are mixed by nature. For instance, they may have sakya, but it may have a little parental in there. So if they're older than Krishna and they have sakya, then they have a little parental affection. So it's a vatsalya mixed with their sakya. Or if they're younger than Krishna and they're in sakya, they may have a little dasya mixed with their sakya also. And if they're just equal age, then they have real just sakya, pure sakya like that. So there'll be mixtures like that. But some of the combinations are not compatible. So you cannot have Madhurya and Vatsalya. It's like incest or something. It doesn't match up proper at all. So some mixtures are not possible. Other mixtures, of course, are possible.
But Maharaj, they say Madhurya is all the other levels. How is it possible?
Well, it contains the essence of them, not that in Madhurya Rasa you also experience Vatsalya and whatever like that. So we have with the different rasas, they're at different stages. So we have bhava and prema and sneha and pranaya and man and raga and anuraga and mahabhava. So those are the various intensities of prema. And in general, like dasya will go up to prema, and sakya will go up to pranaya in intensity, and vatsalya of yasoda goes up to raga, and Madhurya Rasa has anuraga, and then the gopis in Vrindavan, especially Radha's gopis, go up to mahabhava like that. So there's various levels there. So if you have Madhurya Rasa with anuraga and mahabhava, then it obviously includes all of the lower stages of bhava, prema, sneha, pranaya, man, raga, anuraga. So they're all included in that. So all the other rasas in that sense are included. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Jai.